of Wisconsin, were educated despite it being the #1 party school. But what about the poor and the ignorant? You got to have these rules to protect them because they can't protect themselves. But here too, a free market works in surprising, counterintuitive ways. Take cars as an example. Do you understand what makes one car safer than another or run better than another? I sure don't, and I assume most of you don't. And yet, it's hard to get really ripped off buying a car here in Madison. I mean, compare the worst that you can buy here with the best the planned economies could produce. That was the Trabant, remember it? It was the pride of East Germany. It was a total piece of junk. We had to put the gas in and the oil and then shake the car to mix them. And yet, this was the best in the planned economies that those brilliant East German engineers could produce. And when the Berlin Wall fell, when communism fell, it disappeared. Now why? Why couldn't their best compete with our worst? Because not everybody has to be an expert for markets to work. We just need a few people, a few car buffs, a few people who read the car magazines. And through word of mouth, the good news and the bad news spread. The good companies thrive, the bad ones atrophy. Freedom will protect the ignorant too. Now, I'm not an anarchist. I'm not arguing we should have no government. We need rule of law. The worst places in the world to live are the places that don't have any rule of law. The African country where nobody will build a factory because they're afraid that your neighbor will steal what you make, or the dictator may take the whole factory. So we need lawyers and rule of law. We need government to keep the peace, to make sure I don't take your stuff or hurt you, to run the courts, to enforce contracts, to create some pollution rules, because there's no incentive to behave well. My smoke may go to your lungs. So we need some government, but how much government do we need? What % of your life should government be? What % of the economy? Should it be 2%? 5%? What's right? We don't think in those terms. I wish we would, because it's out of control. Here's a graph of the growth of government since the beginning of the Republic. And for most of the history of America, government was less than 5% of GDP. It starts going up around World War II, and the big spike is around Lyndon Johnson and the Great Society. Now the line is going straight up, so that promises made now for Medicare, Social Security, there's no way they can be kept. The numbers just don't add up. And yet they keep doing more and more. Here's the same chart broken down as spending per person. I mean, the founders had a good idea. What makes America prosperous? Is it government? And this is what the founders had. This is the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. It's this thin. Constitution and the Declaration together. I mean, now we have just the tax code and its instructions is 55,000 pages alone. But that's not what made America prosperous. What did make America prosperous? Let me ask you. I mean, when I say this to high school kids, I have a show that's in high school. It's called Is America #1, where I went around the world and tried to figure this out. Most countries are not prosperous, and it was not normal for a country to be prosperous. People say, well, America was new, it had all those natural resources and democracy. That's what was new and made us special. And I say, well, India is a democracy. India has natural resources. Oh, India is overpopulated. Well, actually, India's population density is the same as that as New Jersey. New Jersey's doing okay. And Hong Kong has 20 times as many people per square foot. And no natural resources. It's just a rock. And yet Hong Kong went from third world poverty, China-level poverty, to our level of wealth in just 40 years. Why? Why, when 2 billion people on Earth still live on $1 or $2 a day, what did Hong Kong figure out? What did they have? Well, they had economic freedom, limited government, the genius of the founders. In Hong Kong's case, they had the British rulers who enforced rule of law. They kept people from stealing or killing each other. But then they sat around and drank tea. They left the free people alone. But in America, our politicians know better, and they keep passing more rules all the time. 50,000 new pages of rules added to the Federal Register every year, taking away your freedom bit by bit.